Welcome back to Scotty's Hobbies. Day one of the public hearing process of the proposal for the reconsideration of 2009 endangerment findings and greenhouse gas vehicle standards is done. It was yesterday. So watch this video a little bit and see what the group consensus is so far. I don't know if they're categorizing the public hearing or the public comments in a fashion of in favor of or an opposed of, or if this is just what the majority of the thought process is so far. Before we get too far into this video, like, subscribe, share, check out the video library for a ton of automotive helpful DIY videos and emissions deregulations videos. But as you know, the greenhouse gas emission standards could be changing. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But again, these are just for greenhouse gases, not for the smog gases. But the proposal is up to rescind the endangerment findings and just come up with new rules with the new EPA and Lee Zeldin and all. So I'm going to load up or get you going on about 1 hour and 45 minutes of hearings. These are statements that the public has made in favor of or in opposition of this proposal being passed or becoming rule or law. It's not law, it's to become a rule. Law has to be passed by Congress. Now, if you want your voice to be heard in this proposal in opposition of or in favor of, right up here I will post a little card. That video has all the information that you need to be able to go get your voice heard on what you think about this proposal. If you want it to pass, if you don't, and why. Go over there, get your voice heard, and let's get into this video. Listen to what these people have to say, and I'll break it down to you right now. Out of the 200 testimonies, or over 200 testimonies we heard on day one, I would say I don't think there was more than 5 that were actually in favor of this proposal passing or becoming a rule. All of them were against the proposal and wanted to keep these greenhouse gas emission standards and the endangerment findings in the rule books to be able to make the rules off of those findings. So while you're watching these, comment below, let me know what you think. And if you want to see more of these hearings, I'm going to be recording all of them and going through, double checking, just making sure I'm not missing anything. But comment below with what you think. Don't forget to get your voice heard. Here we go.
The next commenter is Katie Brown.
Thank you. My name is Katie Brown. I work as the program manager for the National Religious Partnership for the Environment, a multi-faith alliance working to bring justice on behalf of God's creation. We adamantly reject the proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and roll back the greenhouse gas vehicle standards. I'm currently in South Carolina visiting the island I grew up on. It's a place that I love dearly. And as St. Augustine says, you cannot love something that you do not know. I know the marshes, the rhythms of the cicadas in the southern live oaks, the patterns of the tides. And just like millions of Americans across the country and our siblings around the globe, I am seeing it change before my eyes. Just this past week, the creek behind our house flooded to a level that I've never seen, and our neighbors were telling me that their ocean kayaking business is doing poorly this summer because of the extreme heat. People that know and love their communities are painfully aware of the way that our climate is changing. EPA trying to uplift fringe science and deny basic reality is not going to change that. It is just going to limit progress, make communities sicker, and devastate God's creation for present and future generations. Pope John Paul II said that there can be no rule of law unless citizens, and especially leaders, are convinced that there is no freedom without truth. How can a person be free when they can't breathe the air outside of their home without getting asthma, cancer, or lung disease? How can a person be free when the only homes they can afford are on floodplains or at risk of being burnt down by forest fires? By trying to repeal the endangerment finding and cut life-saving greenhouse gas pollution standards for cars and trucks, the Trump administration is denying the truth of our present reality. God's children and God's creation, both in the U.S. and across the globe, are crying out as they experience the devastating impacts of greenhouse gas pollution. The ethical, moral, and according to the International Court of Justice's recent ruling, legal response to these cries is to do everything within reason to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. Instead, the Trump administration is saying that it does not only care about the suffering of God's children and God's creation, but that it doesn't believe them. People deserve better than this. America deserves better than this. Please hear the cries of the people and the planet and respond. It is not too late to do what is right and just. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Gabrielle Walton.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Gabrielle Walton, and I work with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and I'm here today to express my strong opposition to the EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding. I've never lived in a world where the threat of climate change didn't loom. As someone who was younger than 10 years old when the EPA issued the endangerment finding, I remember learning about climate change as early as first grade and feeling called throughout the years to integrate environmental and climate stewardship into my day-to-day life. For this reason, I was extraordinarily alarmed when I personally experienced the historic floods that inundated Vermont in 2023. All I could think about was the abnormality of what I was experiencing after friends and family told me to pack sweaters for relatively cold summer nights, from the sweltering heat and the humidity to the intensely rainy days. And so were the people who surrounded me, friends and strangers alike. This shocking experience led me to my current role advocating for solutions to the climate crisis. And my work is informed by my experience in Vermont, but also my personal connections to those who suffered during Hurricane Helene and the LA wildfires. After witnessing the immense devastation communities experienced, I realized that homelessness and displacement would be one of the biggest ways people experience the climate crisis, resulting in a renewed dedication to my advocacy. Yet, with the continuous cuts to the federal government and agencies like FEMA withholding or canceling funds to states and local communities, I am deeply concerned as it appears the nation's most vulnerable are being abandoned. This coincides with the EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding, which is further distressing. As the EPA is well aware through its past research, greenhouse gas emissions don't just create heat as an abstract concept. Real people, our family, our friends, our neighbors, and our community members will suffer immensely from the climate crisis. As experts on this call have already stated, and will likely to continue to mention, this suffering will manifest through continued displacement, increased exposure to vector-borne diseases, and reduced access to natural resources like water. We have the science to know why the climate is changing and the technology to pursue meaningful solutions. Yet history, for as long as it will continue to be written, will note that leaders opted to wash their hands of the responsibility for this issue, leaving communities to fend for themselves as the impacts of the climate change accelerate. And as a young adult, I'll spend the rest of my life facing this issue. With this, I strongly urge the EPA to retract this proposal and maintain the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Nancy Bowen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nancy Mateer Bowen, and I serve as Vice Mayor of Coral Springs. Thank you for the opportunity to provide my testimony today. Many of us here today are raising concerns of the proposed shift in federal policy that denies the threat of climate change and weakens standards that limit pollution from cars, trucks, and power plants. As both a local elected official and an environmental scientist, I see firsthand how these issues affect families in my community. The past year was the hottest on record. Across the country, we've witnessed flash floods in Texas, wildfires in California, hurricanes in the Carolinas, and severe weather events that continue to impact Florida residents. These events are not abstract. They impact real people, including seniors, children, and working families who often have the fewest resources to recover. I know from my work that cleaner car standards, stronger protections for power plants, and limits on pollutions save lives. They reduce asthma attacks, prevent premature deaths, and protect drinking water. They also lower long-term costs by making our communities more resilient to disasters. Rolling back these protections would increase risk to public health, raise costs for families, and leave future generations with fewer safeguards. The mission of the Environmental Protection Agency is to protect public health and the environment. I urge you to uphold that mission by maintaining and strengthening protections against harmful pollution. This is not about politics. It's about protecting the health, safety, and well-being of the people we serve. As Vice Mayor, my responsibility is to the residents who trust me to advocate for their health, their safety, and their future. I ask you to do the same at the federal level. Communities like mine are counting on it. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Ann Mesnikoff.
Hi, my name is Ann Mesnikoff. I'm the Federal Legislative Director with the Environmental Law and Policy Center. ELPC works across the Great Lakes Midwest region. EPA should withdraw this proposal. The Clean Air Act requires EPA to protect people from any air pollutant that it deems causes or contributes to air pollution that may reasonably be anticipated to endanger public health and welfare. The science that underpinned the 2009 endangerment finding remains sound and has only gotten stronger. EPA can try to distance itself and Americans from the impacts of climate change by consistently referencing global climate change concerns in this proposal. But across the country and in the Great Lakes region, we are seeing, experiencing, and paying for the consequences of GHGs and the climate change they drive. In 2019, ELPC published a report by leading Midwest scientists that examined the current and projected impacts of climate change on the Great Lakes and the surrounding region. Last month, some of these same scientists updated their assessment, furthering our understanding of how climate change driven by greenhouse gases is directly impacting the health, lives, and the environment of tens of millions of people across the region. These reports will be in the docket. The endangerment finding and the vehicle standards that came after it do not turn Clean Air Act Section 202A1 into a, quote, roaming license to prescribe standards. The result has been standards for the leading sources of U.S. greenhouse gases that save lives and benefit consumers. According to EPA, the 2024 multi-pollutant standards provide significant consumer and health benefits that will be lost if EPA pursues this harmful rescission. We risk losing $13 billion in annual health benefits, $46 billion in reduced annual fuel costs, and nearly $16 billion in reduced annual fuel savings and maintenance and repair costs. The existing standards were never an EV mandate, contrary to claims. The pollution standards for light and medium-duty vehicles were technology neutral, and multiple pathways for compliance promised consumers choices. Similarly, the greenhouse gas heavy-duty standards were promising to deliver substantial benefits. EPA is now seeking to rescind standards that were a win-win. EPA is proposing to deliver a lose-lose plan, one that undermines consumers, investments, and competitiveness of the auto industry. It will put the Great Lakes region, the entire country, and the globe at greater risk of climate chaos. You should withdraw this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Howard Turner.
Good morning. I'm Howard Lerner. I'm the CEO of the Environmental Law and Policy Center. The Environmental Law and Policy Center opposes the EPA's misguided and unlawful proposal to rescind the science endangerment finding that greenhouse gas pollution harms public health and welfare. We request that the agency withdraw its proposal as contrary to law and contrary to sound fact-based science. Moreover, the agency's proposal whipsaws longstanding federal policies, thereby discouraging businesses and governments long-term energy and transportation capital investments that require predictability and sustainability. Climate change is real and accelerating. We're seeing the consequences here in the Midwest of extreme heat, erratic weather, more intense storms, toxic algae outbreaks, and other threats to the Great Lakes. EPA's proposal to abandon the endangerment finding rests on the false premise that greenhouse gas pollution does not substantially contribute to climate change. It does. Since 2009, EPA has repeatedly concluded, based on scientific evidence, that greenhouse gas pollution from power plants and vehicles harms public health. EPA's rationale contains at least two fundamental errors of law. First of all, The proposal misconstrues the Clean Air Act by arguing that greenhouse gas emissions are not pollutants subject to regulations because the impacts are somehow too indirect. The Clean Air Act, however, addresses other air pollutants that have indirect impacts, such as atmospheric ozone depletion or acid rain formation, and Congress reinforced in its 2022 legislation that greenhouse gases are pollutants. Second, EPA argues in its preamble that it can withdraw the endangerment finding and refrain from greenhouse gas pollution, but somehow displace federal common law actions against businesses and preempt state climate change action laws. That violates the Supreme Court's decisions in the American Electric Power and the National Pork Producers case. EPA has no power to change these Supreme Court decisions. The endangerment finding is based on broad scientific consensus about climate change and its causes. We will submit detailed comments to the EPA. The wisest path for the EPA is to withdraw this misguided and unlawful proposal. Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is David Doniger.
I'm David Doniger. I'm speaking on behalf of NRDC's more than 3 million members, supporters, and activists. In my nearly 50 years of working in this field, through administrations of both parties, this proposal is the most egregious violation of science, law, and EPA's mission I've ever seen. Under Administrator Zeldin, EPA is abandoning its primary mission to protect the health and welfare of Americans in order to make the world ripe for unlimited exploitation of fossil fuels. The scientific basis for the endangerment finding has only strengthened since 2009. A Denali-sized mountain of evidence has grown to Mount Everest size since. The impacts are blindingly obvious to millions of Americans suffering through more severe and more frequent storms, heat waves, wildfires, and other weather extremes. Indeed, outside Administrator Zeldin's air-conditioned announcement in Indianapolis, tens of millions of Americans were suffering under sweltering heat. And as he spoke, a Fox News chyron blared out a heat index of 126 degrees in nearby Missouri. It is stunning that the administrator would consider this action on the heels of the Texas flooding that killed 135 people last month. The agency's turnabout rests on a flimsy, error-ridden paper by 5 climate deniers handpicked by DOE Secretary Wright. Climate scientists are coming out of the woodwork to set the record straight. A carbon brief compendium has already identified more than 100 false. A repeal based on that report will not withstand peer review or judicial scrutiny. The proposal also grossly misrepresents the law. It concedes that the Supreme Court held in Massachusetts versus EPA that greenhouse gases are air pollutants, but the proposal now contends EPA has authority only over vehicle pollutants that cause local or regional harm. That proposal also argues that the law covers only pollutants that hurt you directly when you breathe them, not those that cause deadly heat waves, fires, floods, and storms. There are no such limitations in the Clean Air Act. EPA now suggests that Massachusetts should be reconsidered, but the Supreme Court.
The next commenter is Melody Rice.
Hi, my name is Melody Reese. I'm the Federal Policy Director at Mom's Clean Air Force. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning. The endangerment finding and the clean vehicles rules are critical to EPA's ability to protect families from the emissions that cause global warming. The link between carbon pollution and global warming is well established by science, and warming is becoming more evident every year as dangerous extreme weather grows in intensity, affecting every corner of our country. The DC area where I live is no exception. According to a summary of the 2018 National Climate Assessment released during President Trump's first term, the city is heating up, downpours are intensifying, and our snow season is shrinking. The report also warns that these changes will accelerate into the future if greenhouse gas emissions continue unchecked. Unfortunately, this prediction has come true. 9 of DC's 10 warmest years have occurred since 2012. Last year was our warmest year yet, with several records being broken. We had multiple consecutive days over 100 degrees last summer, and multiple excessive heat warnings, which are issued when the heat index is expected to reach or exceed 110 degrees. In extreme heat, people are at increased risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and this is especially true for babies and small children, whose temperatures rise 3 to 5 times faster than those of adults, whose bodies have a harder time cooling down, and who may not recognize or be able to communicate that they're dehydrated or overheating. Warming weather also means increased air pollution. The DC metro region received failing grades in the American Lung Association's most recent State of the Air report, released in April. Worsening air quality, excessive heat warnings, regular flooding. This is our reality, and we can reduce future harm by taking meaningful action on carbon and methane pollution, or we can walk away, condemning future generations to increasing risks. To me, the path is clear. The endangerment finding is foundational to EPA's ability to protect us from the dangerous emissions that cause global warming. The health of our families, communities, and future generations is at stake. I urge EPA to put people over polluters, to honor its mission to protect public health and the environment, and to oppose any effort to undermine or revoke the endangerment finding and the clean vehicle standards. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Elizabeth Bouchard.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Bouchard, and I am a public health manager for Mom's Clean Air Force. I live in Vermont with my family, and I'm here today to strongly oppose EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and limits on greenhouse gas emissions from motor vehicles. Global warming is already intensifying extreme weather and endangering families around the country. It's increasing the intensity and frequency of flood events. And 2 summers ago, my community and many others in Vermont sustained devastating flooding that destroyed homes and businesses, traumatizing families and causing lasting economic harm. Last July and this July, Vermont experienced flooding again, devastating many of the same farms, businesses, and communities that were still trying to recover from the previous floods. Global warming is contributing to Vermont's increasing flooding. A recent study found that extreme precipitation in the Northeast is expected to increase by 52% by the end of the century. In addition to their impact on the physical and economic infrastructure of communities, floods can also have a profound impact on mental health. Experiencing a flood event has been linked with an increased risk of anxiety disorder, symptoms of depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, and many other mental health challenges. According to the American Psychiatric Association, the number of people who experience mental health impacts after a disaster often outnumbers those physically injured by a staggering 40-1. We have seen the agonizing reminders of the dangers of flooding in other states already this summer, states like Texas, but we also know that it is not too late for us to act on climate change and not too late for us to minimize the climate pollution that is threatening virtually every aspect of our future. The endangerment finding is a vital foundation for the climate action our children deserve. Every amount of warming that we prevent from tailpipes and other sources will mean a safer, healthier world for our children and future generations. It is unthinkable that we wouldn't do everything in our power to work towards this world, and unthinkable that EPA would consider rolling back climate pollution protections in a moment like this. Please do not rescind the endangerment finding and limits on climate pollution from motor vehicles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Gil Capper.
Good morning, and thank you. My name is Jill Capper, and I am the program manager for the Center for Climate Health and Equity at the American Public Health Association. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and have also worked and lived in Minneapolis and Michigan and have seen how climate change is impacting, sorry, I'm having a little bit of a cold, is impacting all these places and communities firsthand. I'm deeply passionate about protecting people's health from the impacts of climate change and ensuring a healthy planet for all. Before coming to Washington, D.C. 3 years ago, I worked at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the City of Philadelphia Department of Public Health, and Minnesota Department of Health. On behalf of the American Public Health Association, which represents more than 25,000 public health professionals and advocates across the country, we urge EPA to uphold the endangerment finding under the Clean Air Act. Weakening it would put the health of millions of Americans at risk. Undermining the endangerment finding would not only violate EPA's legal obligations, it would abandon its mission to protect human health and the environment. The scientific consensus, including from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the U.S. National Climate Assessment, and the EPA's own research, shows that greenhouse gas emissions are driving a worsening climate crisis that directly harms public health. The impacts of climate change, including intensified heat waves, more air pollution and wildfires, as we've seen, will threaten human health and life. Additionally, this proposal would also repeal greenhouse gas emission standards from passenger vehicles and heavy-duty trucks, which ignores the fact that the transportation sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. Reports from the Lancet NAPHA and the American Lung Association confirm increasing health harms from fossil fuel pollution, including asthma, cardiovascular disease, mental health impacts, and heat-related illness and premature deaths. And as someone with asthma, I can tell you my asthma definitely kicks up on days with poor air quality, making it much harder to breathe. Climate action must be guided by science, public health, and environmental justice, not politics or profit. Once again, on the behalf of APHA's thousands of members working in every state and community, we urge EPA to oppose any rollbacks and defend the endangerment finding and act decisively to safeguard the health of all communities.
Thank you very much for your comment. Our next commenter is Caroline Solomon.
Good morning. My name is Caroline Solomon, and I'm a Clean Vehicles Fellow at the Natural Resources Defense Council. I'm here today on behalf of NRDC and its over 3 million members who support our efforts to safeguard the rights of all Americans to clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet. Today, the EPA is attempting to create a future where Americans bankroll big oil at the gas pump, and not only with their wallets, but also with their health and our collective future. The proposal to reconsider the 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding under Section 202A of the Clean Air Act and eliminate all mobile source GHG emission standards fundamentally contradicts the EPA's core duty to protect human health and the environment. While heat waves, droughts, and floods intensify across the country, getting rid of these standards is beyond short-sighted and prioritizes polluters over people. By the prior EPA's own analysis, the light-duty vehicle standards yield net benefits of $2.1 trillion over the next 30 years, including $820 billion in fuel savings and $1.8 trillion in public health and climate benefits. The current EPA's draft regulatory impact analysis pretends that these savings don't exist, relies on arbitrary assumptions that inflate supposed savings, and is riddled with factual errors. But even this sloppy and flawed modeling can't conceal the fact that these standards actually lower gas prices, drive innovation, reduce America's dependence on foreign oil, and strengthen domestic manufacturing of clean cars. This in turn curtails the spewing of dangerous greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, helping to mitigate catastrophic climate change. For these reasons and others that we will expand upon in written comments, we urge the EPA to reverse course, maintain strong mobile source GHG regulations, and reaffirm the endangerment finding. If not, it's our children who will pay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Ashley Hillard.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Ashley Hillard. I'm the North Carolina field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force. And on behalf of the over 76,000 members of the North Carolina chapter of our organization, I ask that the EPA not rescind the endangerment finding or our vital clean cars and clean trucks protections. The endangerment finding is foundational to the EPA's ability to protect us from the emissions that contribute to the climate crisis. Through my work, I often hear from concerned parents who have children with asthma, cystic fibrosis, and other health issues related to the need for good quality air. Similarly, my family and I deal with health issues ranging from severe allergies to COPD. Climate change makes air quality worse in a number of ways. Hotter days contribute to the formation of smog, which is harmful for little lungs to breathe. Global warming is also creating hotter, drier conditions, which are favorable for intense wildfires and longer wildfire seasons, which then emits dangerous smoke that can travel hundreds of miles away from its source. Children's health, public health must be a priority. North Carolina is still dealing with the devastation of Hurricane Helene, the deadliest mainland U.S. hurricane since Hurricane Katrina. Helene destroyed homes, businesses, and lives. A study from the World Weather Attribution Group found that rainfall associated with Helene was about 10% heavier due to climate change. And if the world continues to burn fossil fuels, causing global warming to reach 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, devastating rainfall events like those experienced with Helene will become another 15 to 25% more likely. And this is as we currently have Hurricane Erin expected to impact the Outer Banks. I moved to North Carolina from California, where wildfires devastate areas in the state year after year, polluting the environment, leaving people without homes, and costing more and more money to repair the damage, with the recent Los Angeles fires causing an estimated economic loss of $250 billion. We need agencies like the EPA to regulate greenhouse gases from sources like transportation, power plants, and the oil and gas industries that fuel more and more weather disasters. The science is clear. The endangerment finding is essential to protecting people's health and the health of the planet. We all live here. We will all be affected by climate change. Again, I ask the EPA to not rescind the endangerment finding. Future generations are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Jane Black.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Janie Black. I live in Brown County, Wisconsin. I am the Wisconsin Field Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force. I'm here today not just as an advocate, but as a mother of a daughter and son whose health is greatly impacted by air pollution. I'm here for all our children whose very lives depend on clean air in a stable environment, stable climate. I strongly urge you not to rescind the endangerment finding or limits on greenhouse gas pollution from motor vehicle tailpipes. We cannot afford to walk away from these vital protections. In 2025, the Milwaukee Journal reported that Wisconsin's climate is becoming warmer and wetter. Across the state, temperatures have warmed about 3 degrees and rainfall has increased about 5 inches or 17% since 1950, according to the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impact's most recent report. Higher temperatures can increase the formation of ground-level ozone, a pollutant that irritates the lungs and airways. Ozone can trigger asthma attacks and many other health conditions, and research suggests it can increase the risk of multiple sclerosis and trigger MS flares. Higher temperatures mean longer pollen seasons, with even more pollen worsening allergies and asthma. Intense storms and wildfire smoke impacts air quality, harming respiratory health. There are nearly 77,000 children in Wisconsin struggling with asthma, and for my son who has asthma, it means a daily struggle to breathe, greater use of his inhaler, and additional medicine that has horrible side effects that also affect his anxiety and mental health. And for my daughter who has multiple sclerosis, it means living every day taking precautions that make her world and life very small, and relapse episodes that cause lesions that deteriorate her MS even further. Science is clear that climate change is driven by human activity, largely the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. The transportation sector is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, accounting for over a quarter of total climate pollution in the U.S. in 2022. I'm asking
Jane, you accidentally hit the mute button for like your last 15 seconds.
I am so sorry. I didn't touch anything. I don't know where we left off, but we'll start right here. I am asking to protect the endangerment finding and limits on climate pollution from motor vehicle tailpipes for the sake of our children. Their health and safety should be our priority. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Cynthia Palmer.
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Palmer, Senior Analyst for Petrochemicals at Moms Clean Air Force. I oppose efforts to undermine or revoke the endangerment finding and tailpipe vehicle standards. Air pollution from combusting fossil fuels is putting floods, fires, and hurricanes on steroids. These climate emergencies are triggering chemical disasters. The factory explosions and fires, melting pipelines, and toxic releases that add a terrifying sequel lasting for years or decades and ending in cancer and other illnesses. With storms on the horizon, petrochemical facilities flare massive amounts of toxic chemicals. In the case of Hurricane Harvey, for example, companies smothered Texas communities with nearly 2,000 extra tons of benzene dioxins and other hazardous pollutants. Fossil-fueled extreme weather triggers chemical fires and explosions. At the Arkema chemical plant in Crosby, Texas, for example, the more than 3 feet of floodwaters damaged refrigeration systems meant to keep flammable chemicals from decomposing and igniting. Likewise, in Saltartia, Mississippi, a pipeline carrying carbon dioxide used in oil drilling fractured violently due to heavy rains and floods, spewing carbon dioxide for hours. The carbon dioxide displaced oxygen in the air, so car engines stopped running and people could not escape. CO2 emissions can cause heart malfunction and death by asphyxiation. The clay, earth, concrete, or sand coverings on Superfund sites are no match for the increasingly powerful hurricanes, floods, and storm surges. At the San Jacinto waste pits, for example, the protective concrete cap was smashed by 16 feet of floodwaters, sending vast amounts of dioxins into the river. Last year, at least 37 states topped 100 degrees, intensifying droughts and wildfires. High temperatures amplify toxicity and worsen the health effects from air pollutants, elevating the risk of asthma, dementia, reproductive harms, cancers, and other ill effects. Mr. Zeldin's proposal is a gift to the fossil fuel and petrochemical corporations, but for the rest of us, it is a reckless attack that will harm our children and jeopardize their futures.
That is time. Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Stephanie Reese. Stephanie, it looks like you're muted. I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Thank you. Hi, my name is Stephanie Reese, and I am the Director of Strategic Implementation and Justice at Moms Clean Air Force, and I am also a mother. As a mother of 2 young and very active boys, being outdoors is a large part of everyday activities, but this year, for the first time ever, they did not participate in outdoor summer camps because of the extreme heat that is being supercharged by climate change. A large part of me wishes that I was being overprotective or inflating the dangers that my children and other children are facing due to global warming. Unfortunately, climate change is a real threat, not only to our quality of life, but also to our health and safety. This is why I am here today to strongly oppose efforts to undermine or revoke the endangerment finding and the tailpipe standards, which are foundational to the EPA's ability to protect us from emissions that cause global warming and impact the health and safety of our children. With more frequent and severe weather, many communities are already experiencing the health consequences of climate change, and communities of color are bearing the brunt of the burden. Children and young people like my sons are especially vulnerable, facing a range of health issues linked to these climate impacts. Higher temperatures make air pollution much more dangerous and have been linked to respiratory problems such as asthma and heat-related illnesses like heat exhaustion. Even negative birth outcomes from air pollution and climate stressors are becoming more common. If we allow the revocation of the endangerment findings, we are sending a dangerous message that we are willing to sacrifice the safety of our children, our families, and our communities in the face of overwhelming scientific evidence that climate change is a threat to our health. The endangerment finding has given the EPA the authority it needs to take action to reduce the harmful emissions that will make our planet uninhabitable We have made progress, but there is still much more to do, and revoking the endangerment finding and the tailpipe standards would be a step backwards. We cannot afford to wait. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Cynthia Palmer. Okay, our next speaker is Shania Oliver, or Shayna Oliver. Might be having some technical challenges there. The next speaker then will be Kadia Amin.
Hi, my name is Dr. Khadija Amin, and I'm a public health practitioner, health disparities researcher, and nonprofit leader based in Atlanta, Georgia. I am Director of Policy and Research at Black Health, a Georgia-based nonprofit focused on improving the community health conditions in which diverse Black populations live, work, and age. And I feel honored to speak on record about Black Health's opposition of the EPA's proposed rescinding of the endangerment finding. The endangerment finding concludes that climate change and the climate pollution caused by it from vehicles, power plants, and other major sources endanger public health. Here in Georgia and across the Southeast region, we are already seeing the devastating impacts of climate change, including extreme weather events like Hurricane Helene and extreme heat. But we know this burden of climate change and the ramifications of greenhouse gas emissions are not equally shared. This burden is concentrated in communities that have already been historically excluded and under-resourced. There are various factors leading to health disparities from climate pollution and associated extreme weather in our country. Geographically, millions of residents in the Southeast are exposed to serious health hazards from rising temperatures. And we also know that more Black populations live in the Southeast than any other region in the United States. Physiologically, research shows that communities of color that live in historically zoned areas are more likely to have higher rates of asthma and various chronic conditions exacerbated by air pollution. And these individuals are also more likely to be at increased risk from negative health outcomes from extreme heat. Structurally, women and Black and other communities of color are more likely to be essential workers and face the consequences of extreme heats, the food insecurity that comes from climate change, and the increased energy burden. In lieu of robust state-level environmental protections, marginalized communities in Georgia and many states across the Southeast rely on federal environmental protections. I urge the EPA to retract this proposal and maintain the endangerment finding to protect our climate, health, and safety. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter will be Shayna Oliver.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right. Thank you for taking my comments. I am Shayna Oliver, field organizer and Indigenous Peoples' Rights Advocate with Moms Clean Air Force, Eco Madres. Our 44,336 members here in Colorado are looking to EPA's leadership to protect their children, and we strongly oppose efforts to revoke the endangerment finding and critical limits on tailpipe pollution. I'm a mother of 4, and we are enrolled members of the Navajo Nation residing in Denver, Colorado. Just 5 miles north from where we live sit multiple industrial polluters, and that pollution is warming our planet and affecting our air quality. According to the American Lung Association's State of the Air report, Denver metro area ranks 6th worst in the nation for ozone smog pollution, which is worsened by global warming. Ozone pollution harms lungs and contributes to asthma. According to the CDC reports, over 500,000 Coloradans, including myself and my youngest child, are affected by asthma. Our communities are the most vulnerable to missing school and work days. As a tribal member of the Navajo Nation, I grew up learning how my grandfather along with other Navajo men and women, mine uranium without protective gear during a time when the EPA didn't exist. My grandfather had many health problems before he prematurely died in his 70s. His life expectancy for Native American people used to be well into their 90s to 100s prior to the exploitation of indigenous lands. Due to exploitation of minerals and resources, Colorado has seen an increase in extreme weather, drought, and wildfire events, costing communities billions in damages each year. Without the endangerment finding and tailpipe pollution rules, our communities will be put in harmful situations that will harm public health and further harm our children's health. As parents, we are given the honor to protect our children. Right now, our children and the 74% of voters who think greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide should be regulated as air pollutants are counting on your leadership. On behalf of all our children, Moms Clean Air Force Colorado parents urge you today to protect our children's right to a healthy, livable future, and protecting the endangerment finding is critical to protecting them. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Shona Yunko.
My video won't start. It says it's didn't stop. Okay.
Just sent you a note. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Shauna Junco. I'm a clinical pharmacist specializing in infectious diseases who has been practicing for over 10 years in Orlando, Florida. I am here today to urge the EPA to not rescind the endangerment finding. From my personal experience in caring for patients and from my review of the literature, I have come to the same conclusion as hundreds of thousands of clinicians living in this country. Climate change is dramatically impacting our health, and by regulating and decreasing greenhouse gas pollution, the EPA is improving our health. Of the many patient stories I could tell, I will share the one most personal to me. One night when I got home from work, I immediately saw how hard my 3-year-old daughter was working to breathe. A few minutes later, while driving back to my hospital with her buckled in her car seat, I remember looking in the rearview mirror as her head fell forward. She was losing consciousness. By the time we got to the children's hospital, her oxygen saturation had fallen to the 70s and she could barely keep her eyes open. Fortunately for my family, she responded to oxygen and medication. And that night we drove home with her diagnosis, an acute respiratory reaction to a respiratory virus. Even though she did not have pneumonia, she could not breathe. Why such a strong reaction, I remember thinking. I would later find out that because my family lives close to a coal plant and a highway, huge sources of greenhouse gas pollution, her risk for significant respiratory diseases is higher. Of the many health risks my children and patients face due to greenhouse gas pollution, I will focus on heat, air pollution, and hurricanes. For much of the summer, Florida is now dangerously hot for everyone. And a study by the Union of Concerned Scientists shows that in just over a decade, my county could regularly experience a feels-like temperature of 127 degrees if greenhouse gas pollution is not curbed quickly. The increasing heat also makes us all more susceptible to exposure to air pollution from cars and power plants. Air pollution increases the rates of asthma, heart disease, and premature deaths. In my practice, it increases the risk of dying from pneumonia, and the costs from these outcomes are tremendous. The EPA must account for them in any economic analysis, and affordable solutions do exist for these pollution sources. Finally, hurricanes stay strong for much longer over land. They cost more to recover from and affect our ability to care for our patients. For example, when Hurricane Maria decimated Puerto Rico, it also took out a huge supply of our country's intravenous fluids. Clinicians like me scrambled to figure out how to deliver life-saving medications without them. Please uphold and strengthen the endangerment finding.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Alita Cochran.
Hi, I'm trying to turn the video on.
Just sent you. Perfect.
Thank you. My name is Alita Kacharian. I'm an MD PhD student at UC San Diego School of Medicine, and I'm here today as a future physician to speak on behalf of my San San Diego community and my patients. I hold a degree in Earth and Planetary Sciences and Environmental Engineering from Harvard University, so my understanding of health is informed by environmental and climate science. My testimony today is endorsed by San Diego Pediatricians for Clean Air and the American Academy of Pediatricians San Diego Climate Change and Health Committee. My city, San Diego, is an epicenter of both childhood asthma and cancer-causing diesel pollution. Medically, I'm extremely concerned for the health impacts that deregulation of vehicular emissions would cause in neighborhoods like the South Bay of San Diego that already have some of the highest rates of childhood asthma hospitalizations in the country. Diesel emissions from vehicular exhaust are modeled to make up 84% of the cancer risk in Portside, San Diego. The primary legal basis we have to advocate for regulation of these emissions and help prevent our communities from getting sick comes from the 2009 EPA endangerment finding. Without this landmark piece of legislation, we lose the ability to protect the health of our citizens and our planet. Legally recognizing global climate change effects on human health allows us to make laws that prevent my patients from getting cancer from diesel pollution simply by breathing the air in their neighborhood. It is difficult and costly to treat cancer, and there is no one cure for cancer. Does that mean I should let my patient die from cancer without treating them? Absolutely not. It is difficult and costly to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to protect the planet, and there is no one sector in which eliminating emissions would cure climate change. Does that mean we should allow cars to pollute the planet unregulated until we're all sick without trying to reduce their emissions? Absolutely not. Claiming that climate change has no effect on air pollution and thus has no effect on human health, as stated in the proposed rule multiple times across the entire document, and in particular in paragraph 2 of the executive summary and on page 36290, is absolutely false. Climate change is a clear and present danger to health by way of worsened air pollution and so much more. My San Diegan patients who are surviving and dying from wildfires, debilitating heat waves, and toxic air will tell you. We call upon the federal government and EPA as leaders who are beholden to us as citizens to step up to protect the health of our communities and our planet for good and revoke the proposed rule. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Doris Brown.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Doris Brown of Washington, D.C. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on why I support protecting the public's health from the dangerous and deadly effects of air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. I strongly encourage the EPA to not rescind the endangerment findings, as such an action will exacerbate the health threats we are already seeing from climate change, especially the impact in vulnerable communities. As a physician, medical oncologist, and past president of the National Medical Association, it is critical that we protect our patients, communities, and our future generations from the impact of climate change pollution. I urge the EPA to not move forward with this harmful action, but instead to prioritize the health and well-being of all communities by following the science and adhering to the intent of the Clean Air Act. Members of the National Medical Association come from, live in, and work in communities where our patients live and work. We encounter daily the faces and hurting bodies of those with poor health as a consequence of pollution. Climate change and the resulting extreme weather conditions impacts my community, my family, future generations of my family, and especially the cancer patients I care for. Coming from a family that is dispersed throughout the country, we are experiencing extreme heat, wildfires, flash floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes. I understand clearly the fears faced by my patients, co-workers, family, and friends as they face the extreme conditions resulting from climate change, coupled with historical environmental injustice. Therefore, I support and strongly urge the EPA to fulfill its mission to protect public health and the environment and not rescind the endangerment findings. Instead, take steps towards a future that ensures our children, the elderly, pregnant women, and those with chronic conditions, no matter where they live, can breathe cleaner air.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Ankush Bansal.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Ankush Bansal. I'm a physician in South Florida, the president-elect of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and president of the Florida chapter of PSR. I strongly oppose the repeal of the endangerment finding passed over 15 years ago. In South Florida, we face high levels of air pollution exacerbated by heat and vehicular traffic. I've seen the effects of air pollution on my patients. During the summer and then the winter tourist season, most of the area's hospitals see higher numbers of admissions for lung disease, heart disease, and stroke, likely due to carbon pollution. Thousands of studies worldwide have shown that climate change and emissions from fossil fuels, particularly non-EV motor vehicles, harm human health. Enacting this repeal would contravene the core mission of the EPA to protect human health and the environment, and it would endanger all of us. Strong carbon standards also reduce other dangerous air pollution made possible by the endangerment finding. Carbon's other co-pollutants, like particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, and volatile organic compounds, negatively impact the health of our communities. They are made worse when they interact with one another, forming secondary pollutants like ozone. By reducing particulate matter and ozone pollution, EPA found that by 2035, carbon emissions standards at power plants would result in reductions of 1,200 premature deaths, 870 hospital and emergency room visits, 1,900 cases of asthma onset, and 360,000 cases of asthma symptoms. Emissions from transportation, the most carbon polluting sector in the U.S., must be addressed by EPA, and the 2024 standards must be kept in place. Those vehicle standards will prevent more than 8 billion tons of additional climate pollution from being emitted by 2055, the equivalent of running 211 typical coal power plants for an entire decade. Help me and my colleagues help our patients and truly make our country healthier. Please abandon this misinformed and dangerous proposal to repeal the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Kyle Robsky.
Hello, my name is Kyle Rofsky, and I am from the city of Allentown, Pennsylvania. I am here to urge, this should be working. I'm here to urge the EPA to maintain and to not rescind the 2009 endangerment finding in greenhouse gas emission standards for vehicles. Allentown is a city of just over 125,000 people, the third largest in Pennsylvania, and we hold an unfortunate distinction. We have been ranked asthma capital of the United States 2 years in a row. This ranking is not just a number, it is kids gasping for air on playgrounds, parents missing work to rush their child to urgent care, and seniors struggling to breathe on hot, stagnant days. Many of our neighborhoods already carry a disproportionate share of environmental burdens. These are the very communities with the least capacity to adapt, facing limited healthcare access, inadequate housing, and fewer resources to protect against extreme heat or pollution exposure. Weakening vehicle greenhouse gas standards would not only accelerate the climate crisis, but also increase harmful co-pollutants like nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, which drive asthma, heart disease, and other chronic health problems. Upholding strong standards is therefore not only a climate necessity, but also an environmental justice obligation, ensuring that the families most exposed to pollution, just like the families here in Allentown, are not continually left behind in public policy. Climate change is not a distant threat for us. It is here today. We are seeing more extreme heat days, heavier downpours that flood our streets, and worsening air quality during summer ozone alerts. These trends will accelerate if we dismantle proven policies to cut greenhouse gas emissions. The science behind the endangerment finding is clear and has only grown stronger since 2009. Greenhouse gases from vehicles endanger public health and welfare. Rescinding this finding and repealing these standards would be a step backwards that our community cannot afford. We need the EPA to protect public health, not weaken safeguards in the face of overwhelming evidence. On behalf of the people of Allentown, our children, our elders, and our most vulnerable neighbors, I urge you to uphold the endangerment finding and keep vehicle greenhouse gas standards in place. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Breck LeBeg. It shows that you're unmuted from our side. You may just be muted on your side. We can't hear you, but we can see you now.
All right, I'm all plugged in. Let's try that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the disturbance. I'm Dr. Breck LeBeg, retired Air Force flight surgeon and a public health physician with Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility. As we boldly say on our website, EPA deregulation is an attack on our health. I'm speaking from Steilacoom, Washington, the first incorporated town in our state that still has the pristine air and clear water of the South Puget Sound. But a few miles to the east, I-5 traffic spews a cloud of particulates that our Department of Ecology identifies as the worst in the state. That diesel smoke reminds me of my first military deployment to Saudi Arabia. I saw a black cloud rising into the clear desert air. Downwind of us, I thought there must be a fire. But no, it was a huge field of diesel generators to keep the systems running on our base in the middle of the desert. It, of course, was not regulated. A small sign on the gate said, "Thank Power Pro. Without us, you're just camping." And it's true. Without fossil fuel energy, we'd be living in 1825 conditions. But fuel smoke has this nasty downside, heart and lung disease. PM 2.5 is even linked to dementia. The only way to avoid that is use less fossil fuel, keep the regulations to make it as clean as possible for as many as possible, keep us as healthy as possible. Without good health, life is just surviving, not thriving. Please keep the regs so our kids can grow up breathing clean, fresh air like we have in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Attorney General Matthew Plankin. One technical issue here. We should have that resolved in just a second. Attorney General Matthew Plankin, are you available?
Oh,
Thank you.
can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Matthew Platkin. I'm the Attorney General of New Jersey, and thank you so much for having me. I am commenting today to express my profound concerns about EPA's proposed rule that would revoke both the endangerment finding and the greenhouse gas vehicle emission standards. This proposal doesn't just ignore settled law, it also ignores basic scientific facts and will harm the health, safety, and welfare of New Jerseyans. If adopted, this proposed rule would put lives at risk and leave the world a worse place for our children than we found it. In my limited time today, I'd like to highlight some of the enormously damaging consequences of EPA's attempt to abdicate its mandate to protect human health and the environment. Human-driven climate change is a reality for the over 9 million people who call New Jersey home. Our communities experience the effects of a changing climate every single day. Take the air we breathe. Vehicles emit greenhouse gases that cause climate change. Vehicle emissions also cause localized air pollution. And this air pollution harms our health. It aggravates chronic cardiovascular and respiratory conditions like asthma, particularly for kids, and increases the risk of many other conditions. In New Jersey, over 1 million vehicles cross our highways every single day. And these include heavy-duty trucks going to and from the Port of New York and New Jersey, which is the busiest port on the East Coast. It's crucial that the federal government tackles the harms caused by vehicle emissions, which so heavily impact New Jersey. I think this should be a no-brainer. Instead, EPA is proposing to roll back the progress we've made on combating air pollution and curbing greenhouse gas emissions. It is also an established fact that human-driven greenhouse gas emissions have led to increased frequency and increased intensity of extreme weather. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy damaged or destroyed nearly 350,000 homes in New Jersey. It cut power to 2 million people. It caused approximately $30 billion in economic damage and tragically took the lives of 38 New Jerseyans. The second deadliest disaster to hit New Jersey, which was Hurricane Ida, just came 9 years later. More than 12 rivers in New Jersey have exceeded their 100-year flood levels, and 30 people lost their lives. New Jersey is now also adjusting to the reality of living with smoke and smog from wildfires, something we previously did not experience. When smoke from Canadian wildfires drifted into New Jersey in 2023, New Jersey's emergency rooms saw more than twice the number of patients with asthma. The heavily forest, million-acre Pineland National Reserve in South Jersey also is predicted to see more intense wildfires in the years to come. These wildfires have become far worse in recent years due to human-driven climate change, and wildfires themselves release large amounts of greenhouse gases. Instead of reducing the emissions that exacerbate conditions for devastating wildfires, the EPA in its proposed rule is ignoring the problem. For a state with 130 miles of Atlantic coastline, sea level rise and flooding pose profound risks to our safety and to our economy. Sea level rise is happening faster in New Jersey than it is globally. Without major climate mitigation, places like Atlantic City could experience flooding 100 days or more every single year. The EPA's actions, as proposed, move us in the wrong direction and make these harms and many others even more likely to materialize. Across New Jersey state government, leaders have stepped up to the plate. We've taken a whole-of-government approach to mitigate and to adapt to the harmful effects of climate change. And my office is taking on polluters to clean up our air, water, and soil, including in our overburdened communities. And we just recently settled this largest single-state settlement against a polluter in American history. The federal government, by contrast, is proposing to ignore the problem entirely. EPA's fundamentally flawed rule threatens to exacerbate the climate impacts on New Jerseyans. It will not survive in court, but it should never have been proposed in the first place. I urge the EPA to withdraw this proposal, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for your comment. The next commenter is Jim Recht.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Dr. Jim Recht. I live and work in the Boston area. I'm a psychiatrist with more than 30 years of clinical and teaching experience, and I'm a member of Climate Code Blue, a consortium of physicians and allied health professionals dedicated to fighting the social injustices created and exacerbated by the climate crisis. I'm asking the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding. I'll use my time to talk about just one example of the health harms of extreme heat. Extreme heat, which we know, based on settled science, is caused and exacerbated by rising levels of atmospheric greenhouse gases. Scientists studied health records from hospitals and emergency rooms across the entire U.S. for over 10 years, from 2010 to 2019, looking at hospitalizations and emergency room visits during heat waves. And here's what they found. For every degree of increasing warm weather temperature, psychiatric emergency room visits increased proportionately. The mental health crises associated with these heat waves were especially severe for individuals with depression, including increasing suicide attempts, but also for individuals with anxiety, including panic attacks, and for individuals with chronic severe mental illness, like manic depressive illness and schizophrenia. And so I would like to ask EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and the rest of EPA's current leadership, and at the risk of seeming overly direct, I'd like to ask the people on today's EPA panel, do you have family members, friends, or colleagues that might struggle with psychiatric conditions like these? And are you comfortable taking the risks involved in rescinding the endangerment finding based on these facts? The EPA was created in the 1970s to shield us from air, water, and chemical hazards. And in 2009, as you've heard, as we all know, the EPA recognized that carbon dioxide and other greenhouses constitute air pollution and that they threaten the public.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Francis DeForest.
Hello there. My name is Frances DeForest. I'm a registered nurse and a resident of Montana living on the Salish Kootenai Pend Oreille tribal lands. As a concerned citizen and member of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, I am here today to make a request on behalf of us nurses and the communities we serve and care for. We demand that the EPA continue to work towards reducing the greenhouse gases and carbon emissions produced in the United States. As we know, climate change is a natural phenomenon that is being accelerated by human-caused greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide. We nurses are concerned that if the EPA rescinds the Clean Air Act emission standards for motor vehicles, that this will also weaken the support for strengthening the emission standards for corporations. Working as a telephonic triage nurse in 45 states across the nation during the COVID pandemic, I personally triaged 10 to 20,000 people per year, as did my coworkers. These people, both vaccinated and non-vaccinated, were often calling in about respiratory illnesses. As we all learned, healthcare providers and the public during the COVID pandemic, that those with underlying respiratory diseases such as asthma and COPD are at higher risk for complications requiring hospital admissions and have an increased risk of death from respiratory viruses like COVID and the flu. Air pollution increases these risks, especially for those in urban and industrial areas, which is now starting to include rural areas. Right now, as I speak, there are 3 to 5 wildfires in the county that I live in. Making America great again? Well, let's take a look at this. The healthy air, carbon dioxide content of healthy air is considered to be at 400 particles per million. In 1960, there were 73.8 million registered vehicles, and the carbon dioxide was 310 parts per million. In 2025, there are 298.7 million registered vehicles, and the CO2 parts per million has increased to 424.8. There's obviously a connection here. We know that together as citizens and...
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Nissa Shafi.
Good morning. My name is Nissa Shafi, and I am the Director of Advocacy at the Allergy and Asthma Network. I'm here today to represent the more than 100 million Americans living with asthma, allergies, and related conditions, whose health and well-being are directly threatened by the proposed reversal of the 2009 endangerment finding. Thank you for the opportunity to offer public comments on efforts to preserve this critical ruling. The 2009 endangerment finding was not a hasty decision. It was a result of a thorough science-based process. This determination concluded that greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare. It has served as a bedrock of our nation's efforts to regulate air pollution from vehicles, a policy that has been repeatedly affirmed by multiple administrations and upheld by courts. To reverse it now would be a harmful regression of public health, scientific consensus, and established legal precedent. This proposed reversal is particularly dangerous for individuals with asthma and other respiratory conditions because it will lead to an increase in harmful air pollutants that are known triggers for asthma attacks and other adverse health outcomes. For people with chronic illnesses, particularly asthma, their health is a delicate balance between managing their medical conditions and controlling their exposure to environmental triggers. This is why the EPA's role in protecting public health is more critical now than ever before. Recent federal policy changes are creating significant new barriers to healthcare access in the form of Medicaid cuts and diminished access to Affordable Care Act coverage. As individuals with asthma and other chronic illnesses navigate this increasingly complex and fragmented healthcare system, they face a higher risk of losing coverage or being able to afford their medications and treatments. For a patient with asthma, a gap in coverage could mean a dangerous interruption in their care, which are essential for preventing life-threatening asthma attacks. In this climate of reduced healthcare access, environmental protections serve as a critical safety net. When individuals cannot rely on consistent and affordable access to their healthcare providers and medications, their ability to manage their symptoms become even more dependent on a clean and healthy environment. By reducing triggers in asthma attacks in the air that we breathe, the EPA's regulations directly reduce the number of people who need to seek costly and unaffordable emergency care. To conclude, we ask that you...
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Dr. Craig Nazer.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. Dr. Craig Nazer, Conservation Chair of the Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club. Carbon dioxide can absorb light energy in many frequencies from one direction and release that energy as heat energy in all directions. This fact was established by Joseph Fourier in 1824. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere absorbs light from the sun and re-radiates that light as heat. This is the greenhouse effect, which warms the planet as more carbon dioxide is present. A constant level of carbon dioxide helps keep the Earth at an optimal temperature for life. Too much carbon dioxide and the planet heats up beyond human tolerance. Since 1958, we have kept very accurate records of the atmospheric carbon dioxide level at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. This level is rising. This rise can only be explained by the increasing burning of fossil fuels by human activity. We have good long-term temperature records that show clearly that the temperature of the Earth is warming. Using satellite data, we can measure the amount of energy the Earth is receiving from the sun. We can also measure the amount of energy the Earth is radiating back into space. More energy is now being absorbed by the Earth than being radiated out into space. This is unequivocal evidence of climate change. It's science, and science is true whether you choose to believe it or not. The amount of damage done to human civilization on Earth by climate change is predicted to be $38 trillion annually by 2049. The number of deaths on Earth attributable to climate change are already hundreds of thousands annually. Climate change is a serious threat to the economy and health of all Americans. Findings by the EPA should be based on science, not politics. Reversing the carbon dioxide endangerment finding will harm and kill Americans and cost the economy billions of dollars every year. Undoing this finding may produce higher short-term profits for the billionaire heavily invested in the fossil fuel industry. It will stall the American development of low-carbon technologies, which the rest of the world needs and which they will buy from whatever country can produce them first. Do not repeal this endangerment finding. Instead, continue to base EPA policy on science, not on corporate welfare for the billionaire class at the expense of the vast majority of the American people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next commenter is Harold Wimmer. Maybe having some technical challenges there. We'll move on to Michael Geller.
Good morning. I am Michael Geller, Deputy Director for the Manufacturers of Emission Controls Association. For nearly 50 years, MECA has been the trade association representing leading suppliers of clean mobility technologies. Our members have a proven track record in developing and commercializing emission control and efficiency technologies for a wide variety of on- and off-road vehicles and equipment in all world markets, offering cost savings to consumers and health benefits to all Americans. I'd like to start by saying we support EPA's decision not to reconsider, but rather maintain standards for criteria pollutants, including particulate matter, NOx, hydrocarbons, and CO in this proposal. The record supports that the criteria pollutant standards are achievable without relying on electric vehicles and yield consumer savings and air quality benefits that are multiple times the nominal per vehicle costs. We urge EPA to continue to leave these standards in place. Clean mobility suppliers represent nearly 300,000 North American jobs, building the technologies that reduce emissions and improve the fuel economy of vehicles. Our industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars for the U.S. economy. Furthermore, suppliers invest billions of dollars each year in technological innovation that gets exported around the world. Our industry has grown in response to technologically feasible and cost-effective environmental regulations. Historical GHG standards have catalyzed investments by our industry. Thus, the existing regulatory framework can most effectively support competitiveness of U.S. manufacturing and regulatory stability on which suppliers rely to make investments and create jobs. Based on the above rationale, MECA suggests that EPA consider the following alternatives. 1, consider setting GHG standards to a level that continues to incentivize technology innovation and U.S. industry competitiveness in a global market. And 2, consider allowing all powertrain technologies to compete on a level playing field based on life cycle accounting of emissions rather than tailpipe-only standards, enabling innovation across internal combustion, hybrid, and electric platforms. Our industry remains committed to working with EPA as you work to finalize this regulation. Thank you for this opportunity to comment, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter will come back to Harold Wimmer.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Harold Wimmer, and I'm proud to serve as the president and CEO of the American Lung Association. The American Lung Association is the nation's oldest voluntary health organization, and we work toward a world free of lung disease. We base everything that we do on science, and in the case of climate change, things cannot be clearer. Greenhouse gases are driving climate change, which is harming people's lungs across the country. I urge EPA to withdraw these proposed repeals. The action proposed by the EPA is dangerous, and if finalized, would be a massive setback for health. The endangerment findings is supported by law and the overwhelming scientific consensus around climate change. Overturning it would prioritize polluters over the health of everyone in the United States, particularly the health of our children, seniors, and people living with lung disease. The work of the EPA over the past decade has led to numerous health benefits. Safeguards against methane pollution also reduce emissions of other harmful air pollutants like volatile organic compounds. Rules to reduce carbon pollution from power plants were also estimated to reduce particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxides, all of which are dangerous to public health. And EPA's work to reduce emissions from the transportation sector has helped to deliver health benefits to communities across the country. Standards that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from new vehicles have been used by EPA for decades under multiple administrators. Repealing them would not only threaten an acceleration of climate change, it would also lead to increases in harmful air pollution that impact lung health. The science is clear. Climate change is a health emergency. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Madeline Hall.
Hello, can you hear me, see me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Madeline Hall. I'm a recent graduate from the University of California at Riverside with a bachelor's degree in political science, and now currently reside in Sacramento, where I'm serving as a leverage sustainability fellow with the American Lung Association. In Riverside, Sacramento, and in communities across the United States, young people like me are deeply concerned about the rollbacks and repeals of climate policies intended to safeguard us. This is why I strongly oppose the EPA's proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and the greenhouse gas standards for vehicles. My community in California, it's regularly ranked among the most polluted in the country, and climate-driven extremes have added to that burden. We have seen extreme heat, storms, flooding, and choking wildfire smoke in just the past few years itself. I'm someone who lives with the daily reality of what this pollution means. I've lived in California all my life, and protecting air we breathe has only gotten harder with each new fire or heat wave increasing health harm and cost to families and individuals. It could be easy to forget how bad things once were and how far we've come because of strong science-based regulations, but that progress is not always guaranteed, and we cannot afford to turn back on science. Rolling back the endangerment finding and clean vehicle standards will leave communities in poor air quality even worse. The endangerment finding exists because of decades of evidence that shows that greenhouse gas emissions contribute to climate change and harms communities. And we're already experiencing it with the high asthma rates, the extreme heat, and the smoke that penetrates deeply into our lungs. I respectfully ask the EPA to protect the endangerment finding, protect vehicle standards, and to put health first. Please do not finalize this dangerous rollback, especially when the science supports it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is the Reverend Carrie Maria Ryerson.
It says I'm unable to start video for some reason. Here we go. Okay. Good morning. My name is Kari Ryerson. I'm a pastor of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, also known as the ELCA. It's a denomination of about 3.3 million members, and I'm the Director for Corporate Social Responsibility. The ELCA has a process by which it develops social teaching, the public proclamation of our church. We spend years studying an issue from the point of science, social science, theology, the Bible, and our tradition. More than 30 years ago, the ELCA developed social teaching expressing concern about the way we were depleting the resources on our planet and causing global warming. Operating out of a framework that declares God as the beneficent creator of a world that is good, our social teaching on the environment sets out 4 principles. First, we're all affected by what happens on the planet. All of us are entitled to have our voices heard. Second, we depend on each other, and we help and defend each other. Third, the earth and its bounty belongs to God, not us, and so we use it for God's intent, which is to make sure everyone has enough. And lastly, the Bible includes, both in its account of creation and its description of Jubilee laws, an understanding of rest and regeneration. We allow ourselves and the earth to rest so that we may provide for the future. More recently, the ELCA developed social teaching specific to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. The ELCA holds that the wisdom of science is a God-given gift, and we use that gift to make decisions about how to live. Our climate change social teaching quoted the UN Secretary General's statement issued with the IPCC assessment report. The alarm bells are deafening, and the evidence is refutable. Greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel burning and deforestation are choking our planet and putting billions of people at immediate risk. Given the nature of scientific understanding around climate change, our church has declared that addressing climate change is a kairos moment, the only time this term has been used in our social teaching. All of our values around what creation is, a gift from God, something to be shared to support each other, something we want to be there in the future. All of these values are being challenged by removing the option of regulating emissions. Our church does not trade the present for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Alexa Jordan.
Hello, my name is Alexa Jordan, and I'm here on behalf of the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, or AFA. For more than 70 years, through 13 presidential administrations, AFA has been the nation's trusted ally for people with asthma and allergies. We are the largest and oldest patient advocacy organization dedicated to improving the lives of those living with these chronic conditions. Today, I want to speak about the urgent need to uphold the endangerment finding. For the 28 million Americans with asthma, the endangerment finding is not an abstract policy issue, it's a matter of life and death. Each day in this country, 9 people die from asthma, and every time air pollution levels rise, so do emergency room visits, hospitalizations, and severe asthma attacks, especially among children. The health impacts of air pollution are well documented, and many of the panelists have discussed them today. Breathing polluted air can cause or worsen breathing problems and asthma attacks, cause difficulty breathing deeply: decreased lung growth in children, reduced lung function, greater need for asthma medication and emergency care, cardiovascular disease, and adverse birth outcomes, including preterm birth, low birth weight, and stillbirth. Research has even linked air pollution to the development of childhood asthma. If we are committed to addressing the growing crisis of chronic illness in children, then we must pursue policies that do not lead to the development of those conditions. The toll is not only our children's health, it's also economic. Asthma is also one of the leading causes of missed school days in the United States, accounting for more than 13 million absences each year. When children miss school, parents often miss work to care for them, compounding the disruption for families and for our workforce. In total, the annual economic cost of asthma is an estimated $115 billion, including both healthcare expenses and lost productivity. On average, a person with asthma faces medical costs that are more than $3,200 higher each year than someone without the disease. The EPA's decision to rescind strict limits on greenhouse gas emissions from cars, power plants, and other industrial sources will have devastating consequences for our community. It will mean more missed school days and more missed work, more hospitalizations, and more asthma-related deaths. On behalf of the Asthma and Allergy Foundation, I urge you to strengthen, not weaken, protections that reduce air pollution and safeguard public health.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Joshua Glasser.
Hello, can you hear and see me okay?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Glasser. I grew up in North Carolina, but now I'm a resident of Virginia. I've worked on climate change and human health issues for more than 15 years as a student, public servant, and advisor. My objections to this rule are fundamentally about the issue of trust. Several assertions in the rule focus on the political reasons for policy change, which is not central to the issue of public health and welfare. This undermines trust in the fidelity of this process to consider the endangerment of the pollutant, not the political choices we may make based on that danger. This rule draws an inapt analogy with water vapor, which lasts a few days, not hundreds to thousands of years as carbon does. This undermines trust in the ability to rely on the analogies and arguments made in the proposed rule. This rule relies on a questionable assertion that adding a small number of rigorously studied loops in the causal chain weakens causality. Traditional air pollution itself relies on a series of causal steps, from the release of the pollutant into the air, to a person going outside, to that person breathing, to the biological processes in the lungs that create damage. Like climate change, these pollutant effects can be mitigated or adapted to at various steps in the causal chain. Yet the rule asserts that such causality arguments work for traditional pollutants, but not climate change. This rule's puzzling assertions about causality undermine trust in the logic of this decision. This rule depends almost entirely on the self-citation of the administration's own report and lacks adequate citations from independent science. It ignores U.S. national climate assessments, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change assessments, thousands of other studies, assessment reports, meta-assessments, and community-based findings. Together with the fifth National Climate Change Assessment's deletion from the internet, this rule undermines trust that the administration was sufficiently broad-based and careful in their review of the science. This rule also jeopardizes the public trust as people see the yawning gap between what they're seeing and feeling in their own communities and the unduly minimized statements in this report. It further erodes the trust of civil society organizations and our government to follow the best available science and listen to empirical analysis. And without trust in the government's wisdom, prudence, and duty to take care, the business case for investing in our amazing country grows far weaker. Finally, this rule undermines international trust. Our global competitors rely on propaganda. We can and must do better than that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Emma Weibel.
Hello, my name is Emma Weibel, and I am a 17-year-old from San Diego, California. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today in strong opposition of the administration's attempts to repeal the EPA's endangerment findings. The endangerment findings are not a statement of political opinion. They are a statement of scientific fact. Thus, this action by the Trump administration is not a policy decision. It is a deliberate attack against truth that showcases the administration's disregard for the sanctity of our democratic system. There's simply no denying that climate change is real. The fossil fuel industry's own scientists knew it as early as the 1970s, and it is one of the biggest problems facing our world today. Without working to actively fight it, this administration cannot claim to have the best interest of Americans in mind. So let's take a look at how this decision aligns with the Trump administration's priorities. So you want to make America healthy again? I dare the administration to look at the families of the 350,000 Americans whose premature deaths in 2018 were linked to fossil fuel-related pollution and tell them that the EPA isn't going to fight climate change. So you want to protect children? The biggest threat to children isn't drag queens, hormone therapy, or vaccines. It is the more extreme conditions and climate disasters from emissions that they didn't cause and that will impact the rest of their lives. Thus, I dare the administration to look at the families of the 35 children who lost their lives in the recent climate-fueled flooding in Central Texas and tell them that the EPA isn't going to fight climate change. So you want to cut government spending? According to Bloomberg Law, the current yearly cost of climate disasters nears $1 trillion per year, 4 times higher than all of the spending cuts brought forth by the Department of Government Efficiency since inauguration. I think it's time that this administration rethink its priorities and actually take the action necessary to keep Americans safe and healthy. Air pollution, more wildfires, catastrophic torrential storms, heat waves, food shortages, droughts, and more disease. If this is what making America great again entails, then we don't want it. I hope the Trump administration reconsiders this dangerous, hypocritical, and unjust decision. You have heard from professionals with years of relevant experience about why this decision is so harmful, but at 17, I think it is my lack of life experience that speaks the loudest. I and all the other young Americans who are watching as their future is being sold to the highest bidder deserve to grow up with a safe and stable climate. And we need the EPA to fight for us, and we hope you can find the courage to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Jessica Santos.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. My name is Jessica Santos. I am a public health professional, engineer, and nonprofit leader. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I strongly oppose the EPA's attempt to revoke the endangerment finding, which has provided the legal bedrock for protecting public health and mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. The science is quite clear. Scientific consensus has affirmed that greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane significantly contribute to climate change. This impacts and amplifies extreme weather events, including extreme heat, wildfire, floods, and bad air pollution days, all of which directly endanger public health in the short term as well as in the long term. The American Lung Association has found that climate change-driven ozone formation, wildfire smoke, and flooding have direct and profound impacts on the respiratory and cardiovascular health of Americans, contributing to short-term health challenges such as asthma attacks, COPD episodes, and even premature deaths. Currently, I'm based in Southern California, and today we are experiencing what is perhaps the 3rd or 4th extreme heat warning this summer. And when we have extreme heat in our community, we have very, very poor ozone. My community is surrounded by highways and warehouses, and I am acutely aware of the role of the endangerment finding in setting vehicle emission standards for all of the both light and heavy duty vehicles that surround these streets. I urge the EPA to pay attention to the science and the public health benefits that come from reducing vehicle emissions. This not only will protect our communities living directly in these areas, but will also benefit people who aren't living near here because there will be lowered contributions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. I conclude that the EPA's proposed rescinding is based on bad science, and that is why I urge the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding, neither in whole nor in part, and I call on the EPA to fulfill its mandate to protect the environment and protect the health of the American people. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you for your comment. Our next commenter is Case Cohen. Case, I just sent you a note requesting that you unmute.
Sorry. Good morning, and lunch break is coming. My name is Case Keene. I am the volunteer chief financial advisor for Climate Action Now. The law is clear. In Massachusetts versus the EPA, the Supreme Court held that greenhouse gases and air pollutants are air pollutants under the Clean Air Act, and the EPA must regulate them when they endanger public health or welfare. The 2009 finding made that determination after rigorous scientific review. Repealing it would ignore both binding precedent and scientific consensus. The economics also favor keeping the standards. As a finance professional, I focus on risk and return. Vehicle efficiency standards have consistently lowered costs for drivers by reducing fuel use and maintenance cost. Repeal would raise household expenses with the heaviest burden on working families who already spend more of their income on transportation. Also, capital markets account for climate risk. Investors and insurers are shifting money toward low-emission technologies because they see the risks: volatile fuel prices, supply chain shocks, and damages from extreme weather. Policy reversals like this one create uncertainty, raise the cost of capital, and weaken U.S. competitiveness in global markets that are moving forward, not backward. Finally, public health benefits are real. Cleaner vehicles cut CO2, but also local air pollutants that harm people living near highways. Those avoided medical costs and productivity losses are meaningful economic gains. For these reasons, I urge the EPA to withdraw this proposal, maintain the 2009 endangerment finding, and strengthen, not weaken, greenhouse gas vehicle standards. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your comment. So we're now at the end of our morning session. EPA, are you ready to recess for our scheduled lunch break?
Yes, Pam. We can go ahead and take a break now and start again at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you for confirming that. We're going to adjourn for a lunch break. The virtual meeting room is going to remain open, so please feel free to maintain your connection, or you can rejoin a few minutes early. And we'll start